r/AITA BIL sabotaged my scholarship, so I ruined his life forever. The acceptance letter was still pinned to my bedroom wall when I found out my entire future had been stolen from me. I'm sorry, but we've received some concerning information about your character that we feel obligates us to reconsider our scholarship offer. Dean Morrison's voice crackled through my phone speaker, each word hitting like a physical blow. The university has decided to revoke the full-ride scholarship effective immediately. My legs gave out. I slumped onto my desk chair, staring at the wall covered in acceptance letters, scholarship notifications, and a carefully maintained chart tracking my 4.0 GPA through all 4 years of high school. What information? I managed to choke out. There has to be some mistake. We received a detailed report from someone claiming to know you personally. They provided specific examples of academic dishonesty, theft from your workplace, and concerning behavior toward other students. The dean's tone was formal, final. While we cannot reveal the source, the information was compelling enough that we cannot in good conscience. But none of that is true. My voice cracked. I can provide references, work evaluations, anything you need. Please, just tell me what exactly. I'm sorry, but our decision is final. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. The line went dead. I sat there in the silence of my bedroom, surrounded by the evidence of 4 years of relentless work. The acceptance letter to my dream school seemed to mock me from the wall. Full ride to Northwestern. Pre-med track. Everything I'd sacrificed for, everything I'd earned through 60-hour weeks split between 3 part-time jobs and maintaining perfect grades. Gone. My hands shook as I scrolled through my phone, calling Northwestern directly, then the 2 other schools that had offered smaller scholarships. Same story. Same anonymous but credible source who had painted me as some kind of cheating, stealing sociopath. Someone had systematically destroyed me. Mom's voice drifted up from downstairs, laughing at something on TV with my sister Jenna and her husband Derek. The sound felt surreal. How was the world just continuing normally when mine had just imploded? I stumbled downstairs, the acceptance letter crumpled in my fist. Mom. My voice came out weird, strangled. She looked up from the couch where she sat next to Jenna and Derek, her face immediately shifting to concern. Honey, what's wrong? You look. The scholarship's gone. The words felt like glass in my throat. All of them. Someone called the schools and lied about me. Said I was cheating, stealing. I couldn't finish. The color drained from Mom's face. She knew what this meant. We'd had the conversation 100 times, college was only possible with scholarships. There was no college fund, no backup plan. After Dad died, Mom worked 2 jobs just to keep us afloat. That's impossible, Jenna said, sitting forward. Who would do something like that? I looked around the room at the only people who knew about my applications, my interview dates, my scholarship meetings. Mom, who'd driven me to every single one. Jenna, who'd helped me practice my essays. And Derek, who'd always seemed supportive, always asked detailed questions about my progress. Derek, who was now staring at his phone instead of meeting my eyes. I don't know, I said slowly, watching his face. But I'm going to find out. The next 3 days were a blur of desperate phone calls and dead ends. Every admissions office gave me the same corporate sympathy, sorry, but the decision was final. I even tried reaching out to my guidance counselor, Mrs. Chen, who had written one of my recommendation letters. I'm as shocked as you are, she said, genuine confusion in her voice. The person who contacted Northwestern claimed to have first-hand knowledge of incidents at Riverside Market. They mentioned specific dates, your work schedule. She trailed off. Someone who knew your routine very well. My blood turned to ice. Riverside Market was where I'd worked the closing shift on weekends for the past 2 years. The caller knew my schedule. That night at dinner, I watched Derek carefully. He was acting normal, too normal. Complimenting Mom's casserole, asking Jenna about her day at work, even offering to help with dishes. But I caught him glancing at me when he thought I wasn't looking, and there was something in his expression I'd never noticed before. Something calculating. Any luck with the schools today? He asked, his tone perfectly sympathetic. No. I kept my voice steady. Whoever did this really did their homework. They knew details about my work schedule, my classes. Had to be someone close. Derek nodded gravely. That's so messed up. I mean, who would even think to do something like that? The casual way he said it made my skin crawl. Like he was genuinely curious about the methodology. I'm thinking of hiring a private investigator, I lied smoothly. Mom's calling around for quotes tomorrow. Apparently there are ways to trace calls to universities, especially if they were made from local numbers. Derek's fork paused halfway to his mouth for just a fraction of a second. That seems expensive. For something that might not even work. The investigator seemed pretty confident, I continued, making it up as I went. Said most people don't realize how much digital footprint these calls leave. Phone records, IP addresses if emails were involved. Should have answers within a week. Derek resumed eating, but I noticed his jaw was tighter now. After dinner, I retreated to my room and actually started researching. Not private investigators, Mom could never afford that, but Derek himself. It occurred to me that I knew almost nothing about my brother-in-law's background beyond the basics. He worked at some financial firm downtown, drove a decent car, helped Jenna pay for their apartment. They'd been married 2 years, together for 3. But as I scrolled through his sparse social media presence, something nagged at me. His lifestyle seemed off. The car he drove was a BMW, barely 2 years old. Their apartment was in one of the nicer complexes across town. Jenna made decent money as a nurse, but not BMW money. Not luxury apartment money. I found his LinkedIn profile. Senior account manager at Hartwell and Associates Financial Planning. I'd never heard of the company, but their website looked legitimate enough. Professional headshots, fancy office building downtown, all the usual corporate buzzwords about client-focused solutions. Then I started looking at the details more carefully. Derek's profile claimed he'd been with the company for 4 years, but his previous job history was vague. And something about the dates didn't add up with what Jenna had told us about when they met. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop asking questions. Some futures aren't worth destroying families over. I stared at the message, my heart hammering. No one knew about my investigation except the people who'd been at dinner. I screenshotted the text and started typing my response. Wrong number, I think. The reply came instantly. No. It isn't. The anonymous text message felt like a declaration of war. I stared at my phone screen until my eyes burned, reading those 6 words over and over. No. It isn't. Derek knew I was onto him. Which meant I was right. I waited until the house was quiet before sneaking downstairs to Mom's computer. She still kept all our important documents in the same filing cabinet Dad had organized years ago: taxes, medical records, family stuff. I found what I was looking for in a folder labeled Jenna and Derek Wedding, their marriage certificate, some insurance paperwork Derek had helped them set up, and a copy of his employment verification letter from when they'd applied for the apartment lease. The letterhead matched the company website, but something felt wrong about the formatting. I pulled up Hartwell and Associates' official site and compared it to Derek's letter. Close, but not identical. The font was slightly different. The logo was a few pixels off. I took photos of everything with my phone, then crept back upstairs and spent the next 2 hours researching Hartwell and Associates. Their business registration was legitimate, their office was real, but finding actual information about their employees was nearly impossible. No staff directory, no team bios, just generic stock photos and corporate speak. The next morning, I made a decision that probably should have scared me more than it did. I called Hartwell and Associates directly. Good morning, I'm calling to verify employment for Derek Castellano. I pitched my voice higher, tried to sound official. I'm with Riverside Credit Union, and he's applied for a loan. Hold please. The receptionist put me on hold for almost 5 minutes. When she came back, her tone was cautious. I'm sorry, but we don't have anyone by that name in our current employment records. Are you sure you have the right company? My stomach dropped. He's listed as senior account manager. Could you double check? I've checked all our departments, ma'am. No Derek Castellano, and no senior account manager position that I can find. I hung up with shaking hands. Derek didn't work where he claimed to work. Which meant the paycheck he brought home every 2 weeks was coming from somewhere else. And if he was lying about his job, what else was he lying about? That afternoon, I drove to the address listed on Hartwell and Associates' website. The building was real, a sleek glass tower downtown, but when I checked the directory in the lobby, Hartwell and Associates wasn't listed. I asked the security guard, who looked genuinely confused. Never heard of them, and I've been here 6 years. What floor were you looking for? 17, I said, reading from their website. 17th floor is Morrison Legal Group. Has been for as long as I can remember. I felt sick. Derek's entire professional life was a fabrication. But that raised an even bigger question. If he wasn't working at Hartwell and Associates, where was his money coming from? My phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. You're playing with fire. Drop this now. This time, I didn't hesitate. I screenshotted the message and typed back, or what? You'll ruin my life. Too late. I hit send before I could second guess myself. The response came immediately. Your sister doesn't know who she married. Keep pushing and I'll make sure she learns everything the hard way. Some secrets destroy more than just the person keeping them. The threat was clear, but something about the phrasing made me pause. Derek was threatening to hurt Jenna by telling her the truth about himself. That didn't make sense unless the truth was so much worse than just a fake job. I realized I wasn't just dealing with someone who'd sabotaged my future out of spite. I was dealing with someone who had serious secrets to protect. Someone who'd already proven he was willing to destroy innocent people to keep those secrets safe. Which meant I was either going to back down, or I was going to have to become someone willing to destroy him first. I spent the next day following Derek. I know how that sounds, like some unhinged stalker. But I had to know where his money was actually coming from. If he wasn't working at Hartwell and Associates, then what was he doing every day when he left the house in his expensive suit, claiming to go to his non-existent job? I borrowed Mom's car, telling her I had a college interview. The lie tasted bitter, but I was getting used to that. Derek's routine was predictable. He left Jenna's apartment at 7:45 a.m. sharp, same as always. But instead of heading downtown toward the fake office building, he drove to an entirely different part of the city. He pulled into the parking lot of a mid-range office complex, the kind filled with insurance agencies and dental practices. I watched from across the street as he walked into a building marked Pemberton Wealth Management. This time, I didn't call ahead. I waited 20 minutes, then walked into the lobby like I belonged there. The directory showed Pemberton Wealth Management on the 3rd floor. I took the elevator up and found myself in a modest reception area with outdated furniture and motivational posters about retirement planning. The receptionist, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, looked up as I approached. Can I help you? I'm here to see Derek Castellano, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'm his sister-in-law. Family emergency. Her expression immediately shifted to concern. Oh my goodness, of course. Derek's in the file room, but I can get him for you right away. Is everything okay? So he did work here. But why lie about it? Pemberton Wealth Management seemed legitimate enough, if unremarkable. Actually, I said quickly, could you not mention I'm here? I'd like to surprise him. She hesitated. Well, I suppose that would be okay. He's just down the hall, organizing client files. Room 312. I found Derek exactly where she said he'd be, surrounded by towers of manila folders and banker's boxes. He was methodically photographing documents with his phone, page after page of what looked like financial statements and client information. He looked up and saw me standing in the doorway. For a split second, his face went completely blank with shock. Then his expression hardened into something I'd never seen before. Cold. Calculating. What the hell are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing. I stepped into the room, leaving the door open behind me. Hartwell and Associates doesn't exist, Derek. So what's this? Your real job, or just another lie? Derek glanced toward the hallway, then back at me. You need to leave. Now. Why? Afraid your coworkers will find out your sister-in-law is asking uncomfortable questions. I gestured at the files scattered around him, at his phone still open to the camera app. What exactly are you photographing in here? It's not what you think. Then explain it. Explain why you lied about where you work. Explain why you sabotaged my scholarships. Explain where you get the money for that BMW and the luxury apartment. My voice was getting louder, and I didn't care. Explain why you're threatening me to keep quiet about secrets that apparently involve my sister. Derek stood up slowly, and I realized how much bigger than me he was. I'd never felt intimidated by him before. He'd always been just Jenna's husband, friendly and harmless. But standing there surrounded by scattered client files, holding a phone full of photographed documents he clearly wasn't supposed to have, he looked like a stranger. You're in over your head, he said quietly. Walk away now, and I'll make sure this doesn't get worse for your family. Worse how? Your mother's house has a second mortgage she doesn't know about. Jenna has credit cards in her name she's never seen. Your father's life insurance payout was redirected through 3 different accounts before it reached your family. His voice was matter-of-fact, almost bored. I know how to make people's financial lives very complicated. And I know how to make those complications untraceable. The blood drained from my face. You've been stealing from us. I've been managing risk. Now get out. I backed out of the file room on shaking legs, Derek's threats echoing in my head. But I didn't leave the building. Instead, I ducked into the women's restroom down the hall and tried to process what I'd just learned. Derek had access to my family's financial information. Somehow, he'd been manipulating our accounts, our credit, maybe even Dad's insurance money. The scholarship sabotage wasn't just petty revenge, it was part of something much bigger. I pulled out my phone and called Mom, my hands trembling as I dialed. Honey. Is your interview over already? Mom, I need you to check something for me. Can you log into your bank account right now? What? Why? Is everything? Please. Just do it. Check for any accounts or loans you didn't open. I heard her moving around, probably heading to her computer. Sweetheart, you're scaring me. What's going on? Just check. Please. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Then, there's a home equity line of credit here for $47,000. But I never applied for anything like that. My stomach lurched. When was it opened? It says, 2 years ago. Right after Jenna's wedding. Her voice was getting smaller. Honey, what is this? 2 years ago. Right when Derek became part of our family. Right when he would have had access to our personal information, our mail, our financial documents. Mom, I need you to call that number right now and freeze the account. Tell them it's fraud. But how could someone? Derek. The name came out like poison. Derek did this. I heard her sharp intake of breath. That's impossible. He's been helping us with financial planning, he set up Jenna's insurance, she stopped. Oh God. He's had access to everything. The bathroom door opened and Derek walked in. He looked at me calmly, like finding me hiding in the women's restroom was perfectly normal. Mom, I have to go, I said quickly. Call the bank. Now. Wait, don't hang up. I ended the call and faced Derek. Following me into the bathroom. That's not creepy at all. We need to talk. I'm done talking. I know what you've been doing to my family. You know, pieces. Fragments. He leaned against the door, blocking my exit. You don't understand the whole picture. Then explain it. Derek was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. I work here part-time. Data entry, file organization, basic administrative stuff. It doesn't pay much, but it gives me access to client information. Financial histories, investment portfolios, insurance policies. My skin crawled. You're stealing from clients. I'm identifying opportunities. People who won't notice small discrepancies. Families who trust their financial advisors completely. He shrugged. Your family was perfect. Recent widows, young families just starting out, people who don't scrutinize their statements carefully. You targeted us. You married my sister to rob us. I married your sister because I love her. The financial opportunities were just a bonus. His tone was so casual, like we were discussing the weather. And it worked beautifully until you decided to play detective. I thought about Jenna, about how happy she'd been planning her wedding, how excited she'd been to introduce Derek to our family. She has no idea who you really are. And she doesn't need to know, as long as you stay quiet. Why the scholarships? Why destroy my future? Derek's expression darkened. Because you ask too many questions. You've always been too smart for your own good. I watched you for 2 years, saw how you notice everything, remember everything. You were going to figure it out eventually. So you decided to ruin my life first. I decided to remove you from the equation. Send you away to college where you couldn't cause problems. He stepped closer. But then you had to go and investigate, didn't you? Couldn't just accept your bad luck and move on. The bathroom felt smaller by the second. I was trapped with a man who'd systematically destroyed my future and stolen from my family, and no one knew where I was. Here's what's going to happen, Derek said, his voice low and controlled. You're going to stop digging. You're going to tell your mother the bank made a mistake about that loan. And you're going to find a way to pay for college that doesn't involve destroying your sister's marriage. And if I don't? Derek smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. Then your family's financial problems are going to get much, much worse. I stared at Derek's cold smile and felt something shift inside me. The fear was still there, but underneath it, a new resolve was crystallizing. He thought he had all the power because he'd been playing this game longer than me. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated exactly how much I had left to lose. You know what, Derek? You're right. I should stop digging. I pulled out my phone and held it up so he could see the screen. Good thing I already found what I was looking for. His smile faltered. What are you talking about? Voice memo app. Been recording since I walked into that file room. I hit the stop button with deliberate slowness. Got your whole confession. The theft, the fake job, the scholarship sabotage. All of it. The color drained from his face. Delete that. Now. No. I backed toward the bathroom window, not an exit, but at least putting distance between us. But I'll make you a deal. You fix my scholarships, call every school back and admit you lied, and I'll consider keeping your secret. Derek lunged forward, grabbing for my phone. I jerked away, and his hand caught my wrist instead, his grip tight enough to bruise. Give me that phone. Get off me. I twisted away from him, and he lost his grip. I stumbled backward into the sink. The bathroom door opened and the receptionist peered in, looking confused. Is everything okay in here? I heard shouting. Derek immediately stepped back, his expression shifting to concerned brother-in-law mode. Family emergency, he said smoothly. She's just upset about some college stuff. You know how stressful senior year can be. The receptionist's eyes flicked between us, taking in my flushed face and Derek's tense posture. Maybe you should continue this conversation somewhere more private. Good idea, I said quickly. I was just leaving anyway. I pushed past Derek toward the door, clutching my phone. He caught my arm as I passed. This isn't over, he whispered. You're right. It's not. I made it to my car before my hand started shaking. The recording was safely uploaded to cloud storage, but I knew Derek wouldn't give up easily. I backed him into a corner, and cornered people did desperate things. My phone rang as I pulled out of the parking lot. Unknown number. Delete that recording or your sister gets hurt. I nearly swerved into oncoming traffic. Are you threatening Jenna now? I'm explaining consequences. Accidents happen. Car trouble on dark roads. Medical emergencies that take too long to respond to. His voice was calm, matter of fact. Your choice. The line went dead. I sat at a red light, my whole body trembling. This had escalated beyond anything I'd imagined. Derek wasn't just a thief, he was dangerous. And now I'd put Jenna directly in his crosshairs. I tried calling Jenna, but it went straight to voicemail. She was working a double shift at the hospital, probably had her phone in her locker. I left a message trying to sound normal. Hey, just wanted to check in. Call me when you get this. Then I called Mom. Honey, I called the bank like you said. They're investigating the fraudulent loan, but they said it could take weeks to. Mom, I need you to listen carefully. Derek is dangerous. Like, actually dangerous. I pulled into a grocery store parking lot, needing to focus completely on this conversation. I have proof he's been stealing from us and other families. But he's threatening Jenna now. What? That's impossible. Derek would never. Mom. I closed my eyes. I recorded him confessing. He sabotaged my scholarships to keep me from finding out about the financial theft. He's been lying about everything. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Mom. I'm here. Her voice was barely a whisper. What do we do? That was the question. What did we do when the danger was living with my sister, when he had access to all our financial information, when going to the police might trigger him to hurt Jenna before they could act? I don't know yet. But we're going to figure it out. As I sat in that parking lot, I realized Derek had made another mistake. He thought threatening my family would make me back down. Instead, it had just shown me exactly how far I was willing to go to stop him. I spent the rest of that day in a state of controlled panic, checking my phone obsessively for updates from Jenna while trying to figure out my next move. The recording was my insurance policy, but Derek had made it clear he was willing to escalate beyond financial crimes. When Jenna finally called back at midnight, relief flooded through me. Sorry, crazy shift. 3 car accident victims came in right at the end of my double. Her voice was tired but normal. Your message sounded weird though. Everything okay? Where's Derek? Asleep. Why are you asking about? Jenna, I need you to listen to me very carefully, and I need you to stay calm. I took a deep breath. Derek isn't who you think he is. What are you talking about? The company he claims to work for doesn't exist. He's been stealing from families through his actual job at a financial planning office. And he's the one who destroyed my scholarships. The silence stretched for so long I wondered if she'd hung up. That's insane, she finally said. Derek has been nothing but supportive of your college plans. He's been helping Mom with financial stuff since Dad died. You're not making sense. I have proof. I recorded him confessing to everything. You recorded him. What is wrong with you? Her voice was rising. You're talking about my husband. The man I love. The man who's been taking care of our family. Jenna. No. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this jealousy thing has gone too far. I know you're upset about the scholarship, but blaming Derek is crazy. My heart sank. Jealousy. You think I'm making this up because I'm jealous? You've been weird about him since we got engaged. Always watching him, asking pointed questions. And now that your college plans fell through, suddenly he's some kind of criminal mastermind. Listen to the recording. That's all I'm asking. I'm not listening to anything. I'm hanging up now, and I suggest you get some therapy before you destroy what's left of this family with your paranoid fantasies. The line went dead. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Jenna didn't believe me. Worse, she thought I was the problem. Derek had played his role so perfectly for 2 years that my own sister couldn't conceive of his true nature. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek, told you she wouldn't believe you. Some bonds are stronger than accusations from a bitter teenager. Sleep well. The next morning brought a new crisis. Mom called at 7 a.m., her voice shaking. The bank called. That fraudulent loan I reported? They said their investigation shows the account was opened with proper authorization and all the correct documentation. They're treating it as a legitimate debt. I felt sick. That's impossible. The signatures match mine perfectly. The identification was valid. They said whoever opened it knew information that only I would know, Dad's mother's maiden name, the street we lived on when Jenna was born. Derek had been more thorough than I'd realized. He hadn't just stolen documents, he'd studied our family history, learned details that would pass security verification. There's more, Mom continued. 3 credit cards were opened in my name last week. After you started investigating. The balances are already at the limit. My blood ran cold. He's retaliating. $22,000 in new debt, honey. And because the accounts look legitimate, the credit card companies won't freeze them without a police report. Then we file a police report. With what proof? A recording of him talking about file organization and client information. You said yourself it could be interpreted different ways. Mom's voice cracked. He's too smart. He covered his tracks. I realized Derek had been planning for this possibility all along. The moment anyone got suspicious, he could accelerate the financial destruction and make it look legitimate enough to avoid immediate consequences. By the time investigations proved fraud, the damage would be irreversible. And now he was showing me exactly what happened to families who crossed him. Mom, pack a bag. You're staying somewhere else tonight. I can't just leave. I have work tomorrow, and the house. Derek knows where we live. He has keys to everything. He's proven he's willing to hurt us financially, and yesterday he threatened Jenna directly. I was spiraling, I knew it, but the walls were closing in. Derek held all the cards, access to our accounts, Jenna's trust, perfect documentation for his crimes. There has to be a way to stop him, I whispered. But as I sat there surrounded by the wreckage of my family's financial security, I realized stopping Derek might require becoming someone I wasn't sure I wanted to be. I spent the next 2 days in a haze of research and rage, diving deeper into Derek's real life than I'd ever intended to go. If the police needed more evidence, I was going to find it. If the banks wouldn't believe us without documentation, I'd get documentation. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Derek's social media history. I'd been scrolling through years of his Facebook posts when I noticed something odd. Before he met Jenna, his posts were sparse but consistent, photos from bars, tagged locations around the city, normal stuff. But there was a 6-month gap right before he started dating my sister. No posts, no photos, no activity at all. I cross-referenced the dates with public records databases, the kind you can access with a library computer and patience. What I found made my stomach drop. Derek Castellano had been arrested 18 months before meeting Jenna. Embezzlement charges filed by his previous employer, Meridian Financial Services. But the charges had been mysteriously dropped 3 weeks later, and the court records were sealed. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. This wasn't Derek's first time stealing from families through financial firms. He had a pattern, a history. And somehow, he'd made his previous charges disappear. My phone rang. Mom. Honey, Derek stopped by the house today. What? I nearly knocked over my coffee. What do you mean he stopped by? He said he was worried about the family tension and wanted to help clear things up. He brought flowers and that banana bread I like from the bakery downtown. Her voice sounded uncertain. He seemed so genuine, sweetie. So concerned about you. Mom, tell me you didn't let him inside. Well, yes, but just for a few minutes. He said he knew about some financial mix-ups and wanted to help fix them. He had papers for me to sign, something about consolidating the fraudulent accounts to make them easier to dispute. My blood turned to ice. You didn't sign anything, did you? The pause was too long. Mom. He explained it so clearly. Said it would streamline the investigation process, make everything easier for the banks to sort out. Her voice was getting smaller. I thought I was helping. I closed my eyes, fighting off a wave of nausea. What exactly did you sign? Authorization forms for him to act as our family's financial advocate. He said it would give him the legal standing to demand answers from the banks on our behalf. She paused. That was wrong, wasn't it? Derek now had official authorization to access our accounts, to make changes, to speak for our family with financial institutions. He played the concerned son-in-law perfectly, and Mom, stressed, overwhelmed, and wanting to trust family, had given him exactly what he needed to finish destroying us. Mom, we need to call those banks right now and revoke that authorization. But it's past business hours, and Derek said the forms wouldn't be processed until Monday anyway. He said if there were any problems, I could always call and cancel. Monday. Derek had given himself a weekend window where he'd have access, but we couldn't stop him. My phone buzzed with a text, check your email. I pulled up my email on the library computer, my hands shaking. The message was from Derek, sent from a generic Gmail account. No subject line, just an attachment. The attachment was a photo of Jenna walking to her car in the hospital parking garage, taken from behind. She was alone, the garage was dimly lit, and the angle suggested the photo had been taken from someone hiding between cars. Below the photo was a single line of text, Monday morning, everything gets fixed. Your family's financial problems disappear, the scholarship situation gets resolved, and we all move on. Unless you keep pushing. I stared at the image, my sister looking small and vulnerable in that concrete garage, and something fundamental shifted inside me. This wasn't just about my future anymore, or even my family's money. Derek had made this personal. He'd made it about Jenna's safety. And he'd just shown me exactly where to find him. The photo of Jenna in that parking garage burned in my mind all weekend. By Monday morning, I'd made a decision that probably should have terrified me more than it did. I wasn't going to wait for Derek to fix everything on his terms. I arrived at Pemberton Wealth Management at 6:30 a.m., a full hour before Derek usually showed up. The building's security was laughable, a key card reader that half the tenants propped open with doorstops, and cameras that looked like they hadn't been updated since the 1990s. I slipped inside behind an early arriving accountant and made my way to the 3rd floor. The plan was simple, get into that file room and photograph everything Derek had been working on. If he was stealing from multiple families, there would be evidence in those client files. Evidence the police couldn't dismiss as a family dispute. The hallway was empty, but voices drifted from the break room, early staff making coffee and chatting about weekend plans. I tried the file room door. Locked, but it was one of those cheap interior locks you could bypass with a credit card and patience. Inside, the room looked exactly as I'd left it, towers of bankers' boxes and manila folders, Derek's careful organizational system spread across multiple tables. But now I understood what I was looking at. These weren't just random client files. They were profiles of potential victims. I started photographing everything, working methodically through the stacks. Client portfolios for elderly widows. Insurance documentation for young families. Investment accounts for people who clearly had more money than financial literacy. Derek had been building a target list, and my family was just one name among dozens. Then I found the folder that made my hands shake. Castellano, Jenna, life insurance beneficiary update. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a life insurance policy I'd never seen before, a $200,000 policy on Jenna's life, opened 6 months ago. Derek was listed as the primary beneficiary. There were medical forms with what looked like Jenna's signature, but something about the handwriting seemed off. Attached to the back of the folder was a handwritten note in Derek's writing, accidental death clause activated after 12-month waiting period. Waiting period expires next month. My vision blurred. The parking garage photo wasn't just a threat, it was reconnaissance. Find everything you were looking for. I spun around. Derek stood in the doorway, perfectly calm, like he'd been expecting me. You're early today, he continued, stepping into the room and closing the door behind him. Dedication. I respect that. I clutched the insurance folder against my chest. You're planning to kill her. I'm planning for contingencies. Derek moved closer, and I backed against the file cabinets. Jenna's life insurance was always part of the long-term strategy. But it was meant to be a natural endpoint, not an immediate solution. Natural endpoint? Car accident in a few years. Maybe a medical emergency, nurses are exposed to so many risks. He shrugged. Something tragic but believable. After we'd had kids, built a life together. When her death would be devastating but not suspicious. The casual way he discussed murdering my sister made my stomach lurch. You're insane. I'm practical. But you've accelerated my timeline considerably. Derek gestured to the files scattered around us. This operation was supposed to run for another 3 years. Slow, steady extraction from carefully selected families. Perfect success rate, no suspicions. But I ruined that. You forced my hand. The insurance waiting period expires in 3 weeks. After that, Jenna's death becomes profitable enough to justify the risks of moving quickly. I thought about the authorization forms Derek had tricked Mom into signing, about the new debt appearing on our accounts, about the systematic destruction of everything my family had worked for. You never planned to let any of us survive this, did you? Derek's smile was cold. Your family was always meant to be temporary. Jenna was an access point, nothing more. Though I'll admit, I've grown fond of her. Her death will actually be somewhat difficult for me. You're a monster. I'm efficient. Derek pulled out his phone. And now I have photographic evidence of you breaking into a financial planning office and stealing confidential client information. Amazing what some people will do when they're desperate to blame others for their problems. The flash went off, capturing me surrounded by scattered files, clutching insurance documents that I had no legal right to possess. Here's what happens next, Derek said, still photographing. You're going to put those files back exactly where you found them. Then you're going to leave quietly and never come back. In return, I won't have you arrested for theft and breaking and entering. And Jenna? Jenna will live a normal, happy life with her loving husband. Right up until she doesn't. I stared at him, this man who'd spent 2 years playing the perfect brother-in-law while planning to murder my sister for insurance money. Who'd destroyed my future just to buy himself time to complete his plan. You know what, Derek? You're right. I should put these files back. I set the insurance folder on the table behind me, and Derek relaxed slightly. Then I grabbed the heaviest banker's box I could reach and threw it directly at his head. The box caught Derek in the shoulder and sent his phone flying across the room. He stumbled backward, cursing, as client files exploded everywhere. I didn't wait to see if he was hurt, I grabbed the insurance folder and ran. You stupid little, Derek's voice cut off as I slammed the file room door behind me. The hallway was no longer empty. 3 employees stood by the elevator, staring at me in shock as I sprinted past them clutching a manila folder to my chest. Behind me, I heard Derek burst out of the file room. Stop her. She's stealing confidential client information. I hit the stairwell at full speed, taking the steps 3 at a time. Derek's footsteps echoed behind me, along with his voice calling for building security. By the time I reached the ground floor, my lungs were burning and my hands were shaking so badly I could barely push open the exit door. I made it to Mom's car before Derek appeared in the building's lobby. He stood at the glass entrance, watching me with an expression of pure rage as I fumbled with the keys. For a moment, I thought he might follow me into the parking lot, but then I saw him turn back inside, probably to assess the damage and figure out how to spin this. I drove straight to the police station, the insurance folder on the passenger seat like evidence from a murder that hadn't happened yet. My phone was buzzing constantly, Derek calling over and over, then switching to texts. You just committed a felony. Breaking and entering, theft of confidential documents. I have witnesses and photos. Return those files and we can still work this out. Your sister is wondering why you hate her husband so much. Should I tell her about your little break-in? I turned off my phone and walked into the police station with the folder clutched against my chest. The desk sergeant listened to my story with the kind of patience that suggested he'd heard every possible variation of family drama. When I mentioned the life insurance policy and the waiting period expires next month note, his expression grew more serious. Ma'am, you're alleging that your brother-in-law is planning to murder your sister for insurance money, based on documents you obtained by breaking into his workplace. I know how it sounds, but... And you say he's been embezzling money from your family and other clients, but the banks are treating all the transactions as legitimate? I showed him the insurance paperwork, pointed out Derek's handwritten notes about accidental death clauses and waiting periods. The sergeant studied everything carefully, but I could see the skepticism in his eyes. Here's the problem, he said finally. Even if these documents are authentic, there's nothing explicitly criminal here. Life insurance policies aren't illegal. The notes could be interpreted as financial planning rather than murder conspiracy. But the timeline. The timeline is suspicious, I'll give you that. But we can't arrest someone for taking out life insurance on their spouse. He paused. And there's still the matter of how you obtained these documents. My stomach sank. So Derek was right. I committed a felony for nothing. Not nothing. We can open an investigation into the financial irregularities you've reported. But that's going to take time, and it's going to require cooperation from the banks and your sister. My sister doesn't believe me. She thinks I'm making everything up because I'm jealous. The sergeant nodded sympathetically. Family disputes are complicated. But if you're genuinely concerned about your sister's safety, there are other options. Protective orders, welfare checks, family intervention services. I left the police station feeling more hopeless than when I'd arrived. Derek was too smart, too careful. He'd covered his tracks perfectly, and now he had legitimate grounds to have me arrested if I kept pushing. But as I sat in the parking lot staring at the insurance folder, one detail kept nagging at me. Derek's handwriting on those notes was distinctive, angular, precise. And I'd seen that exact handwriting somewhere else recently. Somewhere that might finally give me the proof I needed. I stared at Derek's handwriting on the insurance documents, my mind racing. That precise, angular script, where had I seen it before? Then it hit me like a physical blow. The scholarship rejection letters. I drove home faster than I should have, my heart pounding with possibility. In my bedroom, I pulled out the folder where I'd saved every piece of correspondence from the college application process. Acceptance letters, financial aid documents, and there, the follow-up letter from Northwestern explaining their final decision regarding my scholarship revocation. The letter was typed, but at the bottom was a handwritten note from Dean Morrison. I apologize for any distress this situation has caused. If you have any questions about our decision-making process, please don't hesitate to contact our office directly. Except I'd called Dean Morrison multiple times, and his voice was nothing like the person I'd spoken with on the phone. And now, comparing the handwritten note to Derek's insurance paperwork, the differences were obvious. The letter M was completely different. The slant of the writing was wrong. Someone had forged Dean Morrison's handwritten note. Someone who'd wanted to make sure I believed the rejection was final and official. My phone rang, Mom calling back after I'd left her 3 increasingly frantic voicemails. Honey, what's this about Derek planning to hurt Jenna? You're scaring me. Mom, I need you to call Northwestern University right now. Ask to speak to Dean Morrison directly, not his office, not his assistant. Dean Morrison himself. But why would I? Please. Just do it. Ask him about my scholarship revocation. Ask him if he sent any follow-up letters. I stayed on the line while Mom made the call, my hands shaking as I held both pieces of handwriting up to the light. The forged note was good. Derek had studied Morrison's signature from public university documents, but it wasn't perfect. Honey. Mom's voice was strange. Dean Morrison says he never spoke to you directly about any scholarship revocation. He says he's never heard of you at all. My heart stopped. What? He's checking his records now, but he says Northwestern never revoked any scholarships for character issues this year. He's asking if someone might have been impersonating him. The room spun around me. Mom, ask him to check if they received any calls about me from someone claiming to be a family member or teacher. I heard muffled conversation, then Mom came back on the line. He says they received several detailed reports about you from someone claiming to be your guidance counselor. But when they tried to call your school to verify, they couldn't reach anyone. Because whoever called them made sure to do it during spring break when the school was closed, I whispered, the pieces finally clicking together. They never actually spoke to Mrs. Chin. Derek hadn't just sabotaged my scholarships, he'd orchestrated an elaborate fraud involving multiple universities. He'd studied their procedures, learned their protocols, and systematically destroyed my future with a series of carefully timed phone calls. There's more, Mom continued. Dean Morrison says if the reports were false, they can review their decision. He wants copies of my work evaluations, character references, anything that contradicts what they were told. Hope surged through me for the first time in weeks. Did you tell him about the forged letter? I'm telling him now. Another pause. He's very concerned. He says this kind of fraud is rare but not unheard of, usually involving family members trying to sabotage college opportunities. He wants to know if we suspect anyone specific. I looked at Derek's handwriting again, then at the insurance policy with my sister's name on it, and made a decision that would change everything. Tell him we'll file a formal complaint tomorrow. And Mom. Call Jenna right now. Tell her to stay at the hospital tonight, work a double shift, sleep in the break room, whatever it takes. Don't let her go home to Derek. But she won't understand why. Because in 3 weeks, her life insurance policy matures. And Derek's already proven he's willing to destroy innocent people to protect his secrets. The silence on the other end told me Mom was finally beginning to understand what we were really dealing with. The next morning brought a development I hadn't anticipated. Derek was waiting for me in the school parking lot. He leaned against his BMW like he belonged there, checking his phone casually while students streamed past him toward the building. When he saw me, he smiled and waved like the concerned brother-in-law he'd always pretended to be. My blood turned to ice. Derek had never come to my school before. Ever. I considered turning around and driving straight back home, but he'd already seen me. Running would only prove I was scared, and Derek fed on fear. I parked as close to the main entrance as possible and walked toward the building, keeping groups of students between us. Derek fell into step beside me like we planned to meet. Interesting conversation your mom had with Northwestern yesterday, he said conversationally. Dean Morrison seems very concerned about potential fraud. Good. He should be. The thing is, Derek continued, fraud investigations go both ways. They'll want to examine all the evidence, including how it was obtained. He held up his phone, showing me a photo from yesterday's break-in. Breaking into private offices, stealing confidential documents, that tends to undermine credibility. We'd reached the school entrance. Students were everywhere, teachers monitoring the hallway, security cameras recording everything. Derek had chosen his location carefully, somewhere I couldn't make a scene without looking unhinged. You know what else undermines credibility? I kept my voice low but steady. Forging university correspondence. I compared your handwriting, Derek. The Morrison letter doesn't match. For just a moment, his mask slipped. I saw a flash of genuine surprise before the practiced concern returned. That's a serious accusation. I hope you have better proof than amateur handwriting analysis. I have expert analysis lined up. The university is treating this as an active fraud investigation now. It was a lie, but Derek didn't know that. They're very interested in talking to whoever made those calls. Derek stopped walking, forcing me to stop too. Students flowed around us like water around stones. Here's what's going to happen, he said quietly. You're going to call Northwestern back and tell them you made a mistake. Family stress, graduation pressure, whatever. The reports about your character were accurate, and you're withdrawing your complaint. Or what? Or Jenna gets hurt. Today. His voice was matter-of-fact, like he was discussing lunch plans. Car trouble on her drive to work. Nothing too dramatic, brake failure, maybe. Tragic accident, but these things happen. My mouth went dry. It's broad daylight. There are witnesses everywhere. Accidents don't need witnesses. They just need opportunity. Derek pulled up something on his phone, a map showing the route between Jenna's apartment and a hospital. She takes Riverside Drive every morning. Lots of curves, steep hills. Easy place to lose control of a vehicle. I stared at the map, calculating drive times. Jenna would be leaving for work in 20 minutes. You're bluffing. You wouldn't risk it in daylight. Want to test that theory? Derek's smile was cold. Make the call, or find out how far I'm willing to go. The first period bell rang, and students began filtering into classrooms. Soon the hallways would be empty except for Derek and me. I need proof you won't hurt her either way, I said desperately. How do I know you won't just kill her anyway once I make the call? Because dead wives raise questions. Alive wives can be useful for years. Derek checked his watch. 15 minutes until Jenna leaves for work. Your choice. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, Derek watching every movement. But instead of calling Northwestern, I scrolled to Mom's number and hit dial. Mom, where's Jenna right now? At home getting ready for work, why? Call her. Right now. Tell her not to drive to work today. Tell her to take the bus, get a ride, walk if she has to. But do not let her get in her car. Derek's expression darkened. Hang up the phone. Something's wrong with her brakes, I continued, backing toward my first period classroom. Derek's been tampering with her car. You little, Derek lunged forward, grabbing for my phone. I jerked away and ran toward the nearest classroom, Derek's footsteps echoing behind me in the now empty hallway. I burst through the classroom door with Derek right behind me, startling Mrs. Patterson and a handful of early students already at their desks. Everything all right? Mrs. Patterson looked between Derek and me, clearly sensing the tension. Family emergency, Derek said smoothly, that practiced concern sliding back into place. I just need a quick word with her about her sister. Mrs. Patterson's expression softened. Of course. Would you like to use the hallway? No. I stayed firmly planted inside the classroom. Whatever Derek needs to say, he can say it here. Derek's jaw tightened, but he couldn't force me into the hallway without causing a scene. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom, called Jenna. She's staying home sick today. Says she felt dizzy this morning anyway. What's going on? Relief flooded through me so suddenly my knees nearly buckled. Jenna was safe. For now. Derek saw my expression change and his eyes flicked to my phone. Good news, I hope. The best. I held up the text so he could read it. Jenna's not driving anywhere today. For the first time since I'd known him, Derek looked genuinely rattled. His carefully planned timeline had just collapsed, and he was standing in a classroom full of witnesses with no exit strategy. Well then, he said after a long pause, I guess we'll have to continue this conversation another time. Actually, said a voice from the doorway, I'd like to continue it right now. We all turned to see Principal Martinez standing at the entrance with Officer Chen, our school resource officer. Behind them was a woman in a business suit I didn't recognize. Derek Castellano. The woman stepped forward, pulling out a badge. Detective Sarah Walsh, Financial Crimes Division. We'd like to ask you some questions about irregularities at Pemberton Wealth Management. Derek's face went completely blank. I'm sorry, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I don't work at. We know exactly where you work, Detective Walsh interrupted. We also know about the client files you've been accessing without authorization, and the fraudulent loan applications filed under multiple family names. My heart hammered against my ribs. How did you? Your mother's bank flagged the suspicious account activity yesterday. When they ran the transaction details, they found connections to 17 other families with similar patterns. Detective Walsh kept her eyes on Derek. Amazing how quickly these investigations move when you know what to look for. Derek glanced toward the classroom windows, calculating distances. I'd like to call my lawyer. You can do that at the station. Right now, you're under arrest for financial fraud and identity theft. Officer Chen moved forward with handcuffs, and Derek's composure finally cracked completely. You have no idea what you're interfering with, he snarled, looking directly at me. This doesn't end here. There are things in motion that you can't stop just by. Mr. Castellano, Detective Walsh cut him off firmly, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. As Officer Chen led Derek toward the door in handcuffs, he turned back to me one last time. Check on your sister, he said with a cold smile. Make sure she's really feeling as sick as she claims. Then he was gone, leaving me staring at the empty doorway with ice in my veins. Detective Walsh approached me as the classroom slowly returned to normal. We're going to need your statement about the scholarship fraud and the break-in yesterday. But first, that recording you mentioned to the officers yesterday. We're going to need to hear that immediately. I nodded, pulling out my phone, but Derek's final words kept echoing in my mind. The way he'd said Jenna was feeling sick, like he knew something I didn't. Like maybe her staying home hadn't been as random as Mom thought. I played the recording for Detective Walsh 3 times, watching her expression grow darker with each repetition. When Derek's voice confessed to the scholarship sabotage and financial theft, she made detailed notes. When he casually discussed Jenna's life insurance policy and accidental death clauses, she stopped writing and looked directly at me. We need to get to your sister. Now. The drive to Jenna's apartment felt endless. I kept calling her phone, getting voicemail every time. Mom rode with Detective Walsh while I followed in my car, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. She's probably just sleeping, I told myself. People turn their phones off when they're sick. But Derek's parting words haunted me. The way he'd smiled when he said, make sure she's really feeling as sick as she claims, like he knew something we didn't. When we arrived at the apartment complex, Jenna's car was still in its assigned spot. Detective Walsh examined it quickly while I pounded on the apartment door. Brake lines have been cut, she called out grimly. Recent work, probably done early this morning. My blood ran cold. If Jenna had driven to work like usual, she would have discovered the brake failure on Riverside Drive, exactly where Derek had shown me on the map. Jenna! I shouted, pressing my ear to the door. No response. She gave me a spare key for emergencies, I told Detective Walsh, fumbling through my keychain. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Jenna's purse sat on the kitchen counter next to a half-empty mug of coffee, but there were no signs of her anywhere. Bedroom, Detective Walsh directed, drawing her weapon. We found Jenna unconscious on her bed, still in her work scrubs from the previous night. Her breathing was shallow, and there was a strange sweet smell in the air. Call an ambulance, Detective Walsh ordered, checking Jenna's pulse. Possible poisoning. While Mom called 911, I noticed details that made my stomach lurch. Jenna's coffee mug downstairs, Derek's favorite brand, not hers. Her phone on the nightstand, deliberately turned off. And on her dresser, a small plastic packet that looked like it had contained some kind of powder. He was here this morning, I whispered. Before he came to school. He poisoned her coffee. Detective Walsh was already photographing everything. The timing fits. Keep her talking if she comes around, we need to know exactly what she ingested. The paramedics arrived within minutes, but it felt like hours. They immediately started in 4 and loaded Jenna onto a stretcher. Her skin was pale and clammy, her pulse rapid and weak. What kind of poison are we looking at? One of the EMTs asked. Detective Walsh held up the empty packet. Some kind of sedative, probably. Designed to look like natural illness until it was too late. As they wheeled Jenna toward the ambulance, she stirred slightly. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. Hey, I said, gripping her hand. You're going to be okay. What happened this morning? Derek. She whispered, her voice barely audible. Made me coffee before work. Said I looked tired. Her eyes tried to focus on my face. Tasted weird, but he said it was new flavor. Anything else? Detective Walsh leaned in. Did he say anything unusual? Jenna's brow furrowed with the effort of remembering. Insurance forms. Said I needed to sign updates for work policy. She closed her eyes. Couldn't read them clearly. Everything was blurry. My heart sank. Even unconscious and fighting for her life, Derek had made sure to get Jenna's signature on whatever documents he needed. The life insurance beneficiary changes, I told Detective Walsh as they loaded Jenna into the ambulance. He probably finalized them this morning. At the hospital, doctors confirmed what we'd suspected. Jenna had been given a massive dose of prescription sedatives mixed with something that would have caused respiratory failure within hours. If she'd been alone much longer, or if she tried to drive. She's stable now, Dr. Morrison assured us. But this was definitely attempted murder. Another hour and we might not have been able to reverse the effects. I slumped in the waiting room chair, emotionally drained. Derek was in custody, but somehow that felt like only the beginning. He'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. How many backup plans did he have? How many other ways to hurt my family? Detective Walsh sat down beside me. We found more evidence at Derek's real apartment, a place your sister didn't even know existed. Financial records, identity documents for at least 30 families, and detailed plans for insurance fraud schemes. Real apartment. The address on his employment paperwork. Turns out he's been living a double life for years. The apartment your sister thinks they share. He's been paying for it in cash while maintaining his real residence across town. I thought about my sister, lying unconscious upstairs, married to a man who was essentially a stranger. How long before we know she'll be okay? Physically. A few days. Emotionally. Detective Walsh shook her head. That's going to take much longer. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, one phone call from jail. This isn't over. Some insurance policies don't require the beneficiary to be alive to collect. Check your mother's recent signatures carefully. I showed the message to Detective Walsh, my hands shaking. Even from a jail cell, Derek was still threatening my family. And apparently, Mom had signed something else we didn't know about. The final pieces of Derek's web unraveled over the next 72 hours like a carefully orchestrated demolition. Detective Walsh's financial crimes unit worked around the clock, and what they found was staggering. Derek hadn't just been stealing from families, he'd been running a sophisticated identity theft operation spanning 3 states. The insurance policies he'd forged weren't limited to Jenna. Mom, me, even our deceased father, Derek had taken out policies on all of us, using forged medical records and stolen personal information. 37 families, Detective Walsh told us at the hospital while Jenna recovered. Over $2 million in fraudulent claims and stolen assets. Your family was just his most recent project. But the most damning evidence came from Derek's real apartment. Hidden in a locked filing cabinet, investigators found what Derek called his exit strategy, detailed plans for disappearing with Jenna's life insurance money, complete with fake identification documents and offshore bank accounts. He never planned to stay married to me, Jenna said quietly when Detective Walsh explained the scope of his deception. She was sitting up in her hospital bed, finally alert after 2 days of recovery. I was just a business transaction. The scholarship fraud unraveled just as quickly. Northwestern not only reinstated my full ride but fast-tracked my acceptance after learning about Derek's systematic campaign of deception. The other universities followed suit within days. We're also implementing new verification protocols because of your case, Dean Morrison told me during a personal phone call. This kind of elaborate sabotage was unprecedented. Derek's employer, Pemberton Wealth Management, faced criminal charges for their lax security protocols. The receptionist who'd helped me, Mrs. Henderson, became a key witness when she revealed Derek had been accessing client files after hours for months. I always thought it was odd how dedicated he was, she testified. Coming in on weekends, staying late. Now I know he was photographing everything. The trial moved faster than anyone expected. Derek's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the evidence was overwhelming. The recording of his confession, the forged documents, the life insurance fraud, the attempted murder, each charge carried serious prison time. On the day of sentencing, Derek finally looked like the desperate criminal he'd always been instead of the charming man who'd fooled our family. His expensive suits were replaced with an orange jumpsuit. His confident smile was gone. 25 years without possibility of parole, Judge Martinez announced. The systematic nature of these crimes and the emotional devastation inflicted on multiple families demands the harshest penalty available. Derek stared straight ahead as they led him away, but I caught him looking at our family one last time. Jenna had insisted on attending, said she needed to see him sentenced to truly believe it was over. Any regrets, she'd asked him during a brief exchange before the hearing. Derek had studied her face for a long moment. Just one. I should have picked a family with less curious teenagers. Even then, he couldn't admit he was wrong. Just that he'd made a tactical error. 6 months later, I was packing for Northwestern when Mom found the last piece of Derek's puzzle, a storage unit rented under Dad's name, filled with financial documents and personal items stolen from dozens of families over the years. It's like he kept trophies, Detective Walsh explained as we watched FBI agents catalog the contents. Wedding rings, birth certificates, family photos. He wasn't just stealing money, he was collecting pieces of people's lives. But for the first time in months, those revelations didn't scare me. Derek was gone. My family was safe. And in 2 weeks, I'd be starting the pre-med program I'd worked so hard to earn. Standing in that storage unit, surrounded by the remnants of Derek's crimes, I realized he'd made one crucial miscalculation. He'd thought destroying my future would eliminate the threat I posed. Instead, it had taught me exactly how far I was willing to go to protect the people I loved. Some lessons are worth the cost.